Information security is one of the most important topics in technology today. Is your data secure? Bring Your Own Security Radio is here to help keep you up to date on the latest trends, software, and apps to make sure that your data stays secure. Bring Your Own Security Radio is about to begin. Here are your experts, Dave and Jason.
That's right, I'm Dave.
I'm Jason.
And this is Bring Your Own Security Radio, Thursday, April 19th. Jason, how are you tonight, buddy?
I'm absolutely better. Or
Better?
At least I think I am.
For those that don't know, Jason is in Washington, D.C., and he's in the midst of changing jobs and a few other things.
Yeah.
And he's changing from an agency to another government agency.
Another agency.
and things are probably what you'd expect, I guess.
Yeah, they're ramping up.
Right on. For those tuning in tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about just those things. I happen to work in the healthcare sector of IT out of the greater Cincinnati area, and we're going to talk a little bit about topics that are affecting us in the healthcare sector that are security related, and we're going to talk about things that affect the government sector that are security related. So two areas that I think Jason and I can speak hopefully fairly intelligently on, and I'm sure that
so.
Well, I'm sure we're going to miss things because, there's so much in the security world that not everybody experiences every problem. But at the very least, I hope in an hour we can get you thinking about what might be happening at your organization. And even if you're not in one of those two sectors, maybe you're in an area of IT similar enough, that we can help you out.
Yeah.
So,
or if not, we're not being stimulating whatsoever.
That's right. Also, tonight is the inaugural episode in which we're going to bring on one of our new sponsors, which is BitTrust IRA. So a little free name plug for them there. And we're going to run a little spot for them here in just a little bit. But we want to say thank you to BitTrust IRA for coming on board with us. So thanks, guys. And if you want to learn more about who they are, you'll hear about them, and you can also go to bringyourown.security.net and hit the link from our website there, and go check them out at what they do. Check out their commercial here in just a little bit, and right on. So man, let's. I don't know. In thinking about this, what I wanted to do for tonight. First of all, we had a guest scheduled for tonight. He had to cancel last minute. And
it happens.
It does. And I kind of had this show topic in my hip pocket for some time. And I wanted to elaborate a little bit about things that I've been in the healthcare sector now a total of 8 of my 20 years in IT. And it's spread out. I spent 4 or 5 years, and then I spent another 3 or 4 years. And it's just been interesting at the way that even though IT has changed and threats have certainly evolved, the same things are still relevant, now as
absolutely.
They were years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, a threat's always going to be a threat. A risk is going to be a risk. I mean, you're going to have things that are relatable, whether you're talking 10 or 20 years ago. There's always going to be those.
Right, exactly right, and it's just amazing how we're still running into a lot of the same things. And you would think after, however many years that somebody would have figured out how to solve that problem. And we have certainly solved things like threat attack vectors, but then a new vector doing the same thing shows up, and you're like, well, dang it, I had that fixed. And then here we go again. So it's been interesting for me. I'm sure you're seeing that on the government side, and even in other private sectors that I've worked in, education and manufacturing sectors. It's the same, I guess the same but different. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So one of the things that I've been experiencing lately is over the last probably 18 months, medical things like IV pumps and heart monitors and just things that would touch a patient have become far more electronic than they used to be in the past. And so gone
Yeah.
are the days where you just hang up an IV bag on a metal pole, and stick a needle in somebody's arm. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen anymore. Now you get
Or
these
like the old
pumps.
school pacemakers or
Yeah,
stuff like that. That's kind of autonomous.
exactly.
Now we're kind of working off of things that you can actually kind of like IoT.
Right. Well, that's exactly what
Got
it is.
IoT organs.
It's exactly what it is. I mean, you've got IV pumps, and you punch in on the screen what the medication is, and the it it gets a download over our Wi-Fi at our hospital that tells it,
Yeah.
okay, this patient gets this amount at this pace, whatever, and instead of the nurse hitting buttons on the screen, they simply just plug it in and type in who the patient is, right? And then it
Mm.
automatically downloads that thing. And I'm like, wow, what if
Wow.
somebody were to jump in on our Wi-Fi and hack that, right? And
Yeah.
change that patient
I dare
record.
to say that's a lot like IoT out here.
Yeah, it is. It sure
And it's
is.
almost you'd almost have to, maintain it as you would IoT devices. Well, if you're going to maintain them in a way that's going to be fairly secure, um, you would take the same approach. So
Yeah.
there are documents on securing a lot of IoT devices.
Yeah. Well, we're on the healthcare side. So my point of bringing up specifically about pumps is that in 2017 and late 2016, at least two manufacturers' devices got compromised in different ways. So the same device had two different attack vectors that got compromised at two different hospitals in two different areas of the United States. And at the end of the day, the result was the same. Patients got the wrong dosage of drugs, and that
Ooh.
clearly caused a problem. And so now that this particular manufacturer, and I'm not going to call them out publicly because we don't want other black cats to try to attack these guys, but the manufacturer just spent 4 days at our facility going through every IV pump that we had of theirs to remediate what was wrong. And who knew that an IV pump, or who knew that an IV, I mean, if you look back 8 years ago or 10 years ago, if you were at the doctor or the hospital and had an IV, yeah, you had a metal pole. Who knew that all of
Yeah.
a sudden now this thing is software and wireless controlled, and some hacker could have it overdose you, right? I mean, give you the wrong dose and kill you, or not give you any dose at all, and maybe that kills you. I mean, it's
Well,
scary.
certainly you
Scary.
have other things in place as well, like you're just securing the Wi-Fi, you're segregating it so that if you have an open Wi-Fi, it's segregated from the what you would call the secure Wi-Fi. There's a lot of other things you can put into place that would
Right.
kind of minimize
Well,
that impact.
and that's true, but all it takes is one person with administrative level credentials to click the wrong email, right, and get their credentials compromised. And then
True.
it doesn't matter about all that other stuff. If the
Well,
one
it
wrong,
actually it does, because you're never going to make anything that air gapped. And I implore you to try and make something that air gapped, because I don't think you're going to be able to do it. See, the thing with securing things is being able to have things at an acceptable level.
right?
Now you
Well,
can put other
yeah,
things in place that are going to kind of give you some overlap, but no one thing, and it's always a combination in the sum of the parts
well, and you're
that
right,
that helps secure better.
and
But
that's what
yeah,
we do.
trying to
I
get
mean, we
something
have,
bulletproof, good luck.
yeah, well, and yeah, and that was the point I was making is that if you're in a hospital that's 100 beds, your IT staff is only going to be 8 to 15 people big, right? And
Right.
those 8 to 15 people have to do everything. They have to do software and help desk and hardware repair and networking and electronic health records and security and all that stuff. So everybody's got multiple hats, and and that is an example of our facility. So we do have multiple layers to protect these pumps, but if
Yes.
one wrong person gets compromised, that credentials goes a long way in allowing an attacker to, if they're smart enough about a medical facility, you know what I mean? That's the other part
Right.
too, is you have to have a hacker that understands how electronic health records work, how these IV pumps work, how would I connect that? You know, am I doing wired, wireless, etc. So, yes, it takes a lot of education, but since it's
Well, I mean,
already
if you think of,
happened, it's certainly
yeah.
not impossible because two hospitals can tell you their horror stories. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I can also tell you it's not just technology that you're dealing with here either. You're also dealing with people. You're dealing with policies. You're dealing with other things that need to be in place, with the technology. Because if you're going to do it without, then you might as well be not be doing it all.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's amazing. I mean, just like I said, over the last few days, we've been dealing with just one vendor, 4 days worth of a vendor going through
Mm,
the operating system as you were of these IV pumps, and it's amazing that that has to be a thing that you have to worry about. But yet again, just another attack vector and another platform that people have thought, hey, it'd be great to automate this, and then somebody else
yeah.
thought, hey, it'll be great to attack that. So
But here's the other thing, and not just attacking, is you have to be able to attack it yourself. So doing vulnerability scans, doing port scans and things like that, that is in your benefit as well to do that.
yeah, but no doubt about it. And that over the last 4 days is where I've been as far as learning about how these things work from the inside out so that I can better remediate issues as far as I can. Now, if it's the actual device and it's proprietary, we have to reach out to the vendor. But at least
Yeah.
now I understand a little bit more about what I'm looking at so that I can identify that there's a problem with the vendor's firmware. Whereas before, I wouldn't know that it's working as intended or not.
Yeah.
So at least now I know what intended operation looks like, where I didn't know that, 5 days ago. So crazy, crazy set of things.
Yeah. I can relate, man. It's that thing where you're also dealing with things where you actually have to keep up with things as well. So, keeping up with, say, if you were going to keep up with the National Vulnerability List, or, MITRE has CVE, keep up with those. They tend to help you out a little bit as well.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. I mean, we try to map. We've got so many high trust and NIST and
Hmm.
et cetera, and we try to take a look at all of them and then see what applies. And try to look at the top 10 list um, and again see what applies, and looking at PCI DSS stuff and looking at HIPAA stuff, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're killing me, And we talked about this a little bit last week with our guest last week, and that's
Yeah.
you know there's multiple frameworks that you can look at, and you just you might have to kind of look at a few and kind of pick and choose and get to what works for your organization, or you might just have to settle on one and say that's where we go. And for us, we've kind of went the pick and choose route. We've
Yeah.
try to look at what seems to apply to us and pick the top standards for each one of those. And who knows? That's
And I'd
crazy.
imagine, I'd imagine with what you have to deal with, I think you probably have a good amount of overlap.
Yeah, I mean we certainly do. So one of the other changing the topic a little bit, but one of the other things that um, came up for us is that we are getting ready to initiate our semi-annual emergency action plan test. And for us, that means physically doing things. We don't tabletop it. We're not doing a talk through or anything like that. We are, other than the fact that we're not putting hands on real patients, we are bringing in either off-duty staff members or community volunteers to act as patients, but we
Mhm.
are literally putting them in an area of the hospital as a patient in a bed, and then we're having to either evacuate them using real ambulances and real fire trucks and
Hmm.
real local police officers who are off duty to use their cars or whatever the plan calls for, or we're just moving them from maybe one area of the hospital was physically damaged and we just have to move them to a different area. So we're
So is
testing.
this just like a drill for like emergency?
It is, but this particular one that's coming up in May is like a national one. So what's supposed to be happening
Nah.
is all major healthcare organizations are supposed to be doing it all in the same day. So that at the national level, what would it look like if, the people out of Atlanta, I just brain cramped, the CDC, what if a national thing happened, right? And then the CDC had to
Right.
initiate something, right? And each hospital all of a sudden had to react to whatever that something is. Well, in May of every
Mm.
year, that's when we have to do this on a national level. And our particular hospital, we like to do it. We do something twice a year, something kind of just for us, and something along the lines of the national event. So but
Yeah.
for this year, something new for me was thrown at us. Like, okay, we're going to do this national one, but for our end of year test, we want to simulate that half of the hospital is physically damaged beyond use, but the other half is still working. And what would we do if our phone switch, and even if we had a data center that was up and running, what if we had no outside connectivity via phone or data or anything? How would we initiate getting that back? And one of the things that we're going to investigate with some of the larger carriers of Verizon, Sprint, and AT&T is if we called you and initiated a national emergency or a regional emergency, how long would it take to get a truck that is basically a cell phone tower on wheels to
Yeah.
our location to give us the data connectivity that we need? And then another company, we're going to work on what would it take for you to send me a semi truck, and the trailer itself is set up as offices inside the trailer to where we could put wireless laptops to work off of that cell phone tower truck parked right next to it. So I've never coordinated anything
Hmm.
at that scale, and that's going to be our end of year test. Is what would that look like? And obviously, money is going to be the biggest deal, and
Yeah.
that particular thing, I think we're going to tabletop. You know what I mean? I don't
But
think we're going to
one
literally have
that
a truck.
does, one that does do that is a lot is FEMA.
And that's kind of where we get the idea a little bit. But man,
Yeah, I mean FEMA does it a whole lot, man. And as a matter of fact, I'm trying to think. I may have a couple FEMA contacts. Um, if you wanted to talk to somebody.
yeah. Well, I just literally got this thrown at me days ago, and I'm at the
Mm.
very forefront of a quick, sketching of a plan of action. Like, what would it take to initiate? How long, if I called to say yes, I want to initiate this action plan, how long does it actually take for the trucks to roll up in our parking lot or down the street or whatever it takes? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't even know what that timing looks like yet. So definitely on the
Well, you
very
also have to
front
figure out
edge.
location because that's going to be another thing too. Where you're going to put all this stuff. I mean, do you have a big parking lot? Are you going to have to park it down the street? What are you dealing with as far as that goes?
Right. Yeah, it's exciting. I'm pretty excited about that particular vein of thought process that I have to do that I've never thought of before. So I'm pretty
Yeah,
excited. So
definitely.
for those just tuning in, I'm Dave. He's Jason. Tonight we're
Yep.
just kind of talking about the healthcare and the government sectors and some of the oddball security things that we're facing these days, and things that we knew about, and some things that I never thought of before, and that's what we're doing. So thanks for joining in. We appreciate you. We're going to take a quick 50-second break here, and we're going to introduce you to BitTrust IRA. We'll back in
Yep.
one moment. Want to take advantage of the growth of Bitcoin, but you don't know how? Are you looking to add Bitcoin to your retirement account? The crypto world is confusing. How would you even get involved? BitTrust IRA helps you seamlessly and securely add cryptocurrency to your investment portfolio. Their team handles the entire process to make it easy. You can download your free copy of their cryptocurrency IRA Investor's Guide at bittrustira.com/podcast. That's BITTRUSTIRA.com/podcast. Or better yet, give them a call right now, 855-642-8800. That's 855-642-8800, and tell them Bring Your Own Security Radio sent you. All right, we're back, and thanks again, BitTrust IRA. We appreciate your sponsorship. So back to it. So Jason, we spent the first few minutes talking a little bit about healthcare and some of our stuff, and I've got plenty more. But what's some of the either long-standing issues that you guys face in the government that maybe are not so obvious to the rest of us in the security field? We all know that you guys get probed and hacked or attempted hacks and port scans and all that crap. I think everybody kind of has that problem, but are there things that are specific that you think that maybe the rest of us don't think about?
Well, there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't think about. So and it's been said, shows before, is some of the approaches taken by some, I'm not going to say some agencies, but by some groups of folks. Sometimes it's all about the shiny tools and having this and that, when really, in reality, what you deal with sometimes is the basics. And that's, like I said, going back into baseline configurations, doing regular scans, and not just system scans like if you were going to do Nessus or OSEC or one of those, but also your web scans if you have anything that has a web presence, anything that sticks on the outside. There's a lot of basics there. Configuration management, of course, and I know you've had some pretty heated sentences with with that and change management. So
we've certainly had our issues across the board with all of it, and I think for us, in comparison to you guys, I think we get it. I don't know if I would say equally, but I would say that since our hospital is not like a major, level 1 trauma center that people fly helicopters to get to us, we probably, on a grand scheme of things, don't get hit as often as the bigger trauma centers do. But when I say that we get 2,000 to 5,000 port scans a day, that would be an honest statement. So we get hit pretty often as well.
So you have a pretty high number of assets then.
Yeah, I mean, we're 19 facilities, and
okay.
And with that, we have enough public web-facing patient portals and interfaces for patient information to travel in and out, and all healthcare facilities have that. So, but again, whereas we might have 1,000, a larger trauma center like a Mayo Clinic or something would have tens of thousands of those same types of interfaces. So, we certainly don't have that kind of volume, but we see it.
Yeah, what I've also seen also is segregation. So not only at a network level as far as segregation, but also as an asset level segregation. So let's say you have your side that does admin versus your side that's just like a standard user. I've seen some organizations that kind of had a mix, and the same went for dev and operational stuff. So that's another thing that when I get in and start looking around, like when I start somewhere at least, that's the first thing I look for, is things like that.
Yeah, we have, so at our place, oddly enough, up until just literally the last 12 months, and I know when I get ready to say this, people are not going to believe me, but we were a static IP shop for everything.
Ooh,
everything.
Nice.
But that was because we were a small regional hospital, and They just didn't apply. We're county owned, right? So the county didn't apply
Yep.
funding for IT for almost 12 years. And so the only way that we had any kind of security was a little bit of obfuscation and
Mm.
security by
Security by
trickery, right?
obscurity.
Right. So, and we had to, kind of trick. So everything had an IP address. So if you were coming in and scanning for an IP, things didn't respond in a normal way. So you couldn't tell, am I looking at a server, a printer, a
Hmm.
switch, a router, or a honeypot, right? Or a NAS or something like that. So a little bit of that was how the administrators at that point were able to secure this place. And it was interesting as somebody from the outside in, having been at places that were, DHCP for the last 15 years or whatever, and
Yeah.
walk into a place that hadn't ever had a DHCP server ever on site was mind blowing. And,
Yeah.
I
Well,
walked
then
in
again,
and,
I've been in organizations that said, you know, I'll go ask the question, how many assets do you have? And usually I'm going to get the uh that's typically not it's typically not good in my eyes when I ask somebody that, and they immediately if you can't give me a rough number or at least an exact number, then that's it's not troubling, but it kind of adds to the concern, because the one big thing about it is that knowing your environment should be one of the first um, when you're dealing with trying to secure your network, first of all, but you definitely have to know what you have before you can know how to secure it.
yeah, no doubt about that. And not to give anything away for us specifically, but to say that we have somewhere between 2 and 7,000 devices would be honest. So just imagine if you had that many static IPs you had to manage and keep track
Phew.
of, and what kind of network segregation you had to contend with to try to do segregation, and yet uh, IP helper scripts and layer 3 switching so that you could route things in places that you normally would not route them from. It was
Mm.
definitely always a moving target, right? And always
Seems like a pretty
something.
big list of lists in your DNS.
Yes, it was huge. And the spreadsheet that managed the IP addresses, not a program and not anything automated, an Excel spreadsheet that managed that
Oh,
many IPs,
oh
was
no.
amazing, amazing. So yeah. So yep. So for anybody that's complaining about their spreadsheet list, come deal with about 7,000 IP addresses, and if one
Oh,
and if you make a mistake with one and start getting IP conflicts, go chase that down. So yeah, it's amazing how in 2 years I've been there, how things have gone from where they were to how they are now, thankfully. So craziness. Which brings me into another topic I wanted to bring up, and I admit, as far as being in the field for 20 years, I'm fairly new to DNS security. I've only been really involved with that for about 2 years, maybe 2.5, where I
mm.
paid attention to DNS traffic and how it can be exploited or route poisoned, and or not route poisoned, but uh, other poisons. You can even put in some ARP cache problems, and just create a bunch of issues all about DNS. And if you've got a DNS server sitting inside your environment, or maybe sitting in a DMZ, and your one or two of them is looking at root hints outside your organization, how often do you pay attention to those DNS servers that are outside that you're using for root hints or anything else? How do you know those servers haven't been compromised or built wrong or something else, and it's causing you problems? And
Well, I think there's a
yeah,
couple good ways to do that, and that's one, you're gonna have to do a baseline and make sure that that baseline is spread across all these systems. The other thing you can also do as well is, along with vulnerability scans, you can also do compliance scans. And you can take those compliance scans and base them on what you want to base them on. Is the typical one we use is CIS. So we'll use it against like a custom CIS benchmark that would be configured to it would be configured to the environment, and then that way, what you can do is you can actually trend your compliance data, and then that way, if something else comes up, configuration changes, you're going to know it right away, especially if you're actually doing scans on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah, man, it's amazing.
Now it sounds a little unwieldy at first, man, but that's the thing is there's a cost to it, and that's actually getting it established. Once you have it established, it's easy to maintain. But I think a lot of folks, they don't see the forest through the trees when it comes to this, and that's what some of the problem is, and that's why sometimes it can be a non-starter.
Yeah. You're right.
It just seems like a very daunting task, but when you're done, it's all about maintenance, and maintenance is a lot easier than establishing.
Yeah, definitely. That you're right. That initiation of getting something done is almost always the problem in anything. In anything.
Yep.
So we have so DNS, and I don't think our facilities have ever had anything related to that be a problem, but now I've instituted a few steps to try to help us, signing DNS and things like that, trying to help us keep that as secure as it can, and protecting those DNS servers a little bit better. So one of the other things in healthcare that I probably knew about, maybe I forgot about it, or it's never really affected us much. And it hasn't affected our particular facility, but I've seen facilities not geographically far from us and not too different in size of us that are getting hit with man-in-the-middle attacks on their wireless. And an article that I read that was written by the CTO of a hospital not far from us. He wrote up the attack and everything, and he wrote a white paper about it. And I don't know that that's out in a public forum. I know that it's in a kind of a regional forum for hospitals that belong to the same associations. But he wrote this up, and without saying what hospital it was, the basic gist was somebody took a Raspberry Pi with wireless and built it to look like an award, like hey, you're named the best regional hospital for 2015 or something, right? But it was like an old one, like, so that way, like if it was an award for like 2017, the hospital would want to have a big pomp and circumstance thing about it, right? Hey, we won this big award. So basically it was built to look like a trophy from like 2015, and somebody just walked it in and kind of they found a place around the administration area where other plaques and things were, and they just kind of like slipped this in. And this Raspberry Pi was running off of a battery that lasted about 72 hours is what he said. And so for 72 hours, this thing was just sitting there collecting as much data as it could and then shipping it through a small FTP program that was installed on that Raspberry Pi, and it was just shipping it, uploading all this information that it was collecting via packet grabs, right? And then uploading
packet capture.
Yeah, and then uploading it via FTP so that they could just kind of sift through that stuff and see. And ultimately, some credentials got stolen is how they got compromised, and so their compromise ended up with data loss that people got in and just started deleting things, just kind of causing havoc.
So was it done? Was the authentication done in the clear?
So apparently, apparently people were getting getting on this man in the middle. This thing was projecting the SSID of the private corporate Wi-Fi, and
right.
people were logging in, but they were failing because it wasn't one of the real APs. but I guess nobody really reported it to their help desk. They just went down the hallway and tried again, and it worked because they
Yeah,
actually connected to the
kind of
right
thought it was a
AP.
fluke.
Right. So what they did type got captured, and because they thought they were logging into the right SSID. So,
So I had a
yeah,
keylogger on it too, huh?
yeah, apparently so. So this CTO guy was the way he wrote this article was basically like, if I didn't know anything about IT, this is what it looked like to us. It looked like people were just making a mistake logging in, or that they didn't know their password, they forgot their password. It wasn't, as people were complaining about certain things in that particular physical space, they weren't complaining like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm getting this weird error. You should look at it. It wasn't that. It was more like, why is my password not working? You know what I mean? So they never thought to look of it as a man in the middle attack. And so that's the point of me bringing this whole topic up is, you know, if you as an IT person, whether it's your help desk or whether it's you as a senior level person, whatever, if somebody comes up to you and says X, hey man, I was in the lobby and my laptop or my cell phone wouldn't connect to the internet, you know, most of us by default are just like, whatever, man, try it again. Probably right. We
Yeah.
don't even stop to think. We're so accustomed to it being a user error that we don't bother to think that it could be something more nefarious. And
Well, I think we're also hardwired to start looking for trends. So let's say, well, this person started having a problem, this person had a problem, this person had a problem. When you start to see it more widespread, then it becomes more in your view at that point. We're kind of hardwired that way.
you're right. And I brought this up to our team at a staff meeting. I'm like, maybe we should, 'cause especially at like hospitals, and again, maybe it's the same way at government agencies, but at hospitals, or any company that you're the inside IT person for, not outside consulting, but you tend to get used to a certain core group of people that just always complain about something, or they're not very tech savvy, or that there's a certain area of your facility that just has physical problems or wireless signal interference or something, right? So yeah, you tend to just kind of like whatever,
Yeah.
and you don't think anything about it. And yeah, that's exactly how this CTO wrote that. It was like, it was our front lobby. We really don't, care much about our wireless in that front lobby because nobody's usually pretty static right there. They're usually moving,
And
right?
then that's the best place to put it.
Exactly, because
So
nobody
you
pays
see,
attention.
it's somebody having a really good idea.
Yeah, yeah. So then they went back trying to look at security camera footage of. They didn't have a camera pointed directly at the shelf where this thing was sitting, and they kept
Imagine that.
Yeah, and they kept looking at like, oh, we'll see somebody carrying it in, and I'm like, no, somebody probably carried it in their backpack or some other hidden way, right? And they took
Right.
it out of their backpack off camera. I mean, if they thought this thing through enough, they probably scouted your area enough to know where your cameras were facing. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
it was definitely well planned attack. So it took a little social engineering, I guess, to kind of walk through and see how things were laid out, and
yep.
and a little bit of thought process. Plus, they left a perfectly good Raspberry Pi sitting there because it was running off of a 9-volt battery. Once its life ended, maybe they intended on coming back at a later time to pick it up, or maybe it was just one of those things where they were going to write it off as a loss, because those things are only, the old Raspberry Pis are only 20, $30,
Yeah.
$15, whatever. So,
I
yeah.
mean, I've been in places where they actually had sensors so they could check for rogue sensors.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So there's also that. I mean, that's kind of getting a little fancier than what you would typically see on an everyday basis. But there are ways to combat that.
Well, and so yeah, you're right. There is, and you're right. They targeted that hospital for a reason, and
Hmm.
maybe a former employee knew that they had some weak IT security or something, right? So something had to have happened to target in such a way that somebody thought, hey, a man in the middle attack will go over well here. So my thought was they had some prior knowledge somehow, but if I wanted to attack a government agency, that would be like an awesome idea. I mean, not that I'm trying to plant that idea, so for anybody that's thinking that, that's not my goal
Well,
here.
there's
But
already red teams that do that most of the time. Because like I said, one of the requirements that we do, especially for FISMA, um, is we at least for I know that FISMA high systems are pen tested every year, and that's done during the assessment. Moderate and low systems are not as scrutinized, but I've been in FISMA high systems, and I understand that the way that works, and it's they do they'll come in, they'll have a red team, blue team come in, and they'll do it all the way to social engineering just to get into the building. They'll do physical security, um, they'll do any of that. They'll do as much as they can, and a lot of it lies on the how much they're going to be doing, which is going to be your um, damn it, the name escapes me now. Crap. Rules of engagement. So it depends.
it depends. Hey, the it depends counter goes up.
Yeah.
But
I
no, you're
I
right.
threw that in as a freebie.
There you go. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. So when I read that paper on that man in the middle, I thought, man, I haven't thought of that attack vector in so long that I just in my mind with the way that wireless has progressed over the last however many years that you would think that man in the middle attacks are getting kind of mitigated out a little bit because of rogue um, detections, capabilities that were not there in the past or not as good as it is now. Plus, other techniques such as hiding your SSID and WPA2 Enterprise and going through different radius authentication methodologies and other stuff that you would think
Yeah,
a man in the middle
and
doesn't work.
it doesn't just stop there, because you got to realize that things are brought in that may have some capabilities that you didn't know of. Like, you could have a printer that has a wireless access point on it, could be on by default, could have the default credentials, and you don't even know. And that's one big point of having stuff to where it's secured. You've taken off the default passwords, you've changed the settings so that you're disabling a lot of things that you don't necessarily need, such as wireless access points, because you could very easily connect to that printer and get on the local network from the printer. There's a lot of ways to do that, and that's just another piece of that without even having to have somebody come in and plop something in your organization. It can be done, just by hardware that's already in the organization.
Yep. Well, it's funny that you say that too. You must have been reading my mind. I wasn't going to bring it up yet, but since you did, I'd like to expand on it. But printers, they're, well, I can't remember how long ago I read that article, but it's less than 6 weeks, or however long ago it's been, about a mid-sized company, about 500 people. They had a DDoS attack against just their internet access, not a big deal. But the attack, when they were looking at, I guess they reached out to Cloudflare or some company that they were paying to mitigate DDoS attacks, and they contacted them like, hey, we've got a denial of service going on, we need help. And I guess their company was like, we don't see any inbound traffic hitting you because the
Internal.
traffic, yeah, it was internal off of their printers. The printers had been compromised
Yep.
and was sending requests to the inside default gateway that all the computers would use to get out to the internet. And so that
Hmm.
gateway was just getting crushed with, what was ultimately about 800 megs per second of traffic instead of the normal meg of traffic that they would get. So
Ew.
um, and they didn't have a real high-end thing like a big Palo Alto or Cisco or Fortinet. They had some smaller whatever thing going on. So yeah. So yeah, if you've ever had a DDoS attack, you might want to take a look at what would you do if it was an internal facing attack
Mm-hmm.
hitting. What would you do to mitigate that? Because everybody always does, like, a Cloudflare or some other company from the outside or their
Yep.
ISP to help them deflect that traffic. And
And you could think it was, oh man, there's a bot in here. Is it beaconing back? What's going on? And come to find out, it's something that you already had there. It was just not configured properly.
yep, man, that was amazing. I guess I don't remember the entire details, but I think it was something to the extent of whoever had set all the printers to reach out to the printer's update server,
Yeah.
vendor server, and
Oh Lord.
and try
So
to
it
pull
was it was
a
reaching out like that,
download.
huh?
And we all know that if you go to, let's just say, HP's website and click on the software and downloads, that's never a fast thing to begin with. And if you've got 600 printers trying to download an 18 meg or 30 meg file, even if it's not that big, if the website itself is slow, and then you compound that with slow devices talking on a 10100 network, not even a gigabit network, it was,
Oh, on
yeah,
10100.
yeah, it
Nice.
was an interesting article to read that, they never even considered, what am I gonna do? Yeah, what am I gonna do? So I don't know, man. It made me take a look at our printers, and I'm like, holy crap, man,
Yep.
we are at
Look at
risk
the
of that.
HPs and the
Yeah,
Xeroxes, and yeah, and they do, man. There's plenty of configuration settings on those things, man, that can cause some issues, um, and they should be looked at, and they should hold some importance just as much as any of your endpoint systems you're going to be dealing with as a user. It all matters.
yeah, it's amazing. So, anyways, so yeah, I took a look at our printers, and then I hit our network admin up and one of our server admins and said, hey, guess all the projects and crap we got laying on your plate, guess what other new crap I'm gonna throw at you?
Hmm.
And they were like, just shut up and go back to your own office because I don't care.
So, so how did they go about actually rediscovering um, the other printers? Are you just gonna um, go through the print server and look that way? Or are you gonna go ahead and run a port scan and do it that way? I mean,
Yeah, I
a
mean,
couple ways you can do it.
right, and that the article I read, I don't recall that it said like the how, if the how was even there. I don't recall it. I don't recall that it was there, but as me as a hacker thinker type of person, I know that if I find that you have an HP on your network, the chances are you probably have more than one HP. You probably don't have Kyoceras and Canons and all this other stuff. You probably stuck with a vendor or two, and I know that HP has a piece of software that's kind of like a printer manager so that you can connect and do like firmware updates from one central location. So
Yeah.
if I can get on your network and get that running, that thing will go out and discover all your printers for me, and
Oh, absolutely.
then I can do a configuration change and just click a
Yep.
button and send that change to all of your printers. So it really
Yeah.
does
What I was
doesn't
getting at
take a lot of effort.
as far as discovery was just looking at like Nmap or
Oh
ZenMap and
yeah,
using one of those.
yeah,
And then you can actually start looking at ports and what is actually enabled on the printers,
yep, yep.
and then decide what you need to turn off and how you're going to make it across the board for those printers, because that's going to be also important as well.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. And then, like you said, the wireless at our facilities, we had a couple of printers that were bought as part of our emergency planning. Is if we lost the networks and you couldn't get to the online documentation, how would you continue patient care if you had to
Yeah.
work with paper, right? So we bought a few strategically placed local USB printers attached to computers that had documents stored on them so that we could print them off en masse and get those documents into the nursing people's hands or whoever
Yeah.
to document patient care, right? So during that time for buying those printers, we thought, well, they're going to be low volume use, etc. They bought them as kind of a consumer grade purchase, and they had wireless embedded in them. And like you said before, it was on by default. And then we had some techs from another company came in to help us install those because we didn't have enough hands on deck to get it done. And
Yeah.
they left the wireless enabled by default. And then we
Oh
started.
yeah, I mean it's consumer level. I mean when you get to that point and you're using stuff that has wireless on it like that, it's consumer level. It's consumer grade items, and they're going to have things such as wireless on it and that type of thing. But you typically don't see that. If you buy like the bigger Xerox scanners and things like that, they typically don't have wireless on them because they're made for wired networks.
Right, exactly. So yeah, very interesting scenarios all the way around. Just things that you, like you said, you kind of forget about. You get so used to your daily environment, and you might get compartmentalized. Like I'm the security administrator, so I don't see printer repairs or printer replacement tickets come to me in the queue. We have hardware techs that handle that, so I don't day to day. I don't go out and look and do wireless scanning to see if we have a new SSID that we shouldn't have. I mean, I count on our network administrator to look at rogue access detection. But again, when you're
I don't know, man. In my opinion, I think that may be a fatal flaw, man. I think you should have some overlap.
Yes. Oh, I agree.
Even though it's extra effort on your part, at least you're putting due diligence into it as well. And I think that's where that plays in.
Yep, no, you're entirely right. And unfortunately, I think that we are a good indicator of the average place where you have too little staff and too much to do.
Yep.
So unless somebody's complaining loudly or it's something new, big, and shiny that has to be installed, you tend to not pay attention to some of the proactive things that you could be doing. And that's certainly one of those proactive tasks that you could do. Go out and look for rogue SSIDs and things. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, as an engineer, but also as an architect, I've kind of picked up on. That's one of the bigger pieces I look at when something's implemented. One of my bigger questions is, okay, do you guys have a hardening guide, or do I have to go through this? Because typically you're going to find vendors that, if they're at least a little bit security centric, they're going to have something that's going to harden out a system. Especially if they're gonna put a device in your network, or they're gonna give you an OS to put on your network, like a virtual appliance, that type of thing. It's one of those questions to check the box for me. Is that?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's amazing. It's one of those things where you kind of know about it. It doesn't rear its head very often, so you kind of I don't say you forget about it, but you don't place as much importance on it until that sucker comes back to bite you in the butt.
Yep.
And then you're like, dang it, we should have been doing that, And
but not only that, it's a learning experience. So when it happens, you either learn from it and become proactive about it in the future, or you let history repeat itself.
Yeah. Well,
and
hopefully
I think that should be the name of the podcast.
What's that?
This podcast show.
Oh yeah, this
history repeats itself.
History repeats itself. There you go. Yeah, it's just amazing. Like like I said, this subject can go on and on. I mean, you could talk about, oh, I never thought of that, and then it came up again, or I forgot about
Yep.
that, and it came up again, or any number of ways that you can say it and experience it. Whether it's healthcare sector, government, financial, whatever, manufacturing, whatever segment of the world you live in or work in. That's amazing. So right on. It's wow. What time is it here? It's almost 9:55 in the east.
Yep.
I'm Dave. He's Jason. We've been talking
Yep.
tonight just a little bit about a wide range of things that affect us in our individual fields of study and work, and probably fields that cross over into just about everything else, or security instances that cross over. We also introduced to you tonight a new sponsor for us, and that
Yep.
is tonight's code of the night for your free T-shirts. So last week we
Code word.
that's right.
Don't touch my server.
Don't touch my server was last week, and touch my stuff or any version of that.
That's what it was.
Awesome. Yeah, touch my
Touch
stuff.
my stuff.
I'm gonna touch your stuff. So tonight. So if you've listened to us at all, if you go back and listen to, I'll give you a hint, the first 20 minutes at least of this podcast, at some point you will hear the name of our new sponsor. So
Yep.
tweet hashtag that sponsor's name, and
Yep. And
the
you
first.
get a free shirt.
That's right. We'll send you a free shirt, and all these shirts are IT oriented. They came from different IT vendors at the most recent, which was last year, Black Hat event. I received over 80 freebie giveaway T-shirts. I mean, it was like ridiculous, and I brought them all home just for fun. They've all been washed,
And you
unworn.
put them all on at once.
That's right. That would have been funny. I should.
That's
That would
what
have
you
been.
got to get a picture of right there.
Maybe right there, put them all on, and then take a video of you just like taking them off, and then speed up
Yeah.
the video, like whoosh, 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 whoosh. Yeah, that's a good idea. I might have to do that before I
There
give
you
away
go,
all
man.
those shirts. But yeah, so just tweet at BYOS Radio and hashtag our sponsor's name. First
Yep.
person to do that gets a T-shirt of kind of their choosing. I'm not going to wait for you to waddle through 80 some T-shirts, but I'll send you a list of 5 or 10 vendor shirts that you can choose from. Tell me what size you need. I've got sizes and colors, and some of these T-shirts have cool logos and phrases and funny things, and some are just the vendor name and whatever.
Yep.
So
Some are quirky and some just aren't.
Yep. So, yeah, hit us at BYOS Radio. So, awesome sauce. Next week, we think we're going to be live with you a week from tonight, but there's a slight chance that we're not. And tomorrow, I go see a surgeon to have a total knee replacement of the total knee replacement I had last year, because I'm allergic to my implant. So if I do have surgery, it's going to be on Wednesday in 6 days. And if that's the case, we will not be on the air, but we'll be back the week after. If I'm not
Yes,
having
sir.
surgery, we'll be here. So, but hey, it's only 1 week. We'll give you a break. Go spend your Thursday, watching Mr. Robot 2.0 or something. I don't know. Go binge watch Mr. Robot, and free shout out to them. So, awesome. Well, Jason, it's roughly about that time again. So
It is.
we will say goodnight to you people and goodnight to us people, and we'll see
What do you
you.
mean, you people?
You people, I said you people. If you're not, if we're not here next week, just look for us the week after, and vice versa. Check us out on Twitter at BYOS Radio and Facebook the same, and we will let you know via those two methods if we're going to be live or not, and who our guest will be. So that's all I've got. Jason,
All right.
anything for you? Any final words of wisdom?
No. I can't think of anything at the moment. Don't get caught with your pants down. I
That's
don't
right.
know.
And don't touch your stuff if you do.
Yeah,
That's right.
don't touch my server.
That's right. All right, everybody. Good night, y'all.
See you later.
Thank you for listening to Bring Your Own Security Radio. Join us every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. Find us on Facebook and on Twitter at BYOS Radio, or find us on the web at bringyourown.security.net. Safe browsing, everyone!